I'm live. Oh my gosh, this is scary. Okay, so there's 12 people already. So, can you hear me? Number one, let's just work out all the kinks. So, if you're able to, Rachel, I'm relying on you to tell me if my voice is okay. And since I'll be facing this way, I just want you to tell me if you can hear me when I face this way. Thank you. Okay, doesn't look like there's any glares, so that's good. YouTube live, so I'm excited and nervous and scared all at the same time. I don't know how to turn off other sounds, so bear with me. Corona is so fun. Yay. So I thought I would come on and be able to do a demo for you guys of a photograph that actually one of my students, Sam, took, and she, hopefully Samantha joins us today, hopefully she share with us her little story of that day, but it's a picture of Sandy Hook, the beach at Sandy Hook. She went there, her little story of that day, but it's a picture of Sandy Hook, the beach at Sandy Hook. She went there recently and you see New York skyline in the background. I just really loved it. So I asked her to use the live chat. Hopefully my Wi-Fi stays strong. The first time I did it, for some reason it cut out, but if it cuts out, it works and what doesn't work. So over here I have here because I'm using my table to put my computer on. Now, since I don't have 1,000 subscribers yet, I have to stream from my desktop or laptop. So I'm using my laptop, but once I reach 1,000 followers, project from like, above. So I could do watercolor and things like that, because the faster I get that availability to do that, the faster I can make that happen for you guys. Okay, so on my palette over here, I have a slew of colors. You do not need all these colors. I'm working in oil paint today. You could work in whatever you want. Even if you're working in a completely different medium like watercolor, you can still get something from every demo all across the board. Whenever I say I'm adding white to something, obviously if you're a watercolorist, you would just reverse that with water versus white. Technique, things like that. Now, since I'm working in oil, the paint does dry slower than acrylic. So if you already makes your oil or your acrylic paint dry slower. So this is just one kind. This is made by Liquitex. It's, I don't know if it's reversed for you guys. I think it might be, but it's called the open line. So it opens your drying time. So those are some little tidbits. So like I said, I have my palette over here. It's on a glass palette. And oh, thank you for letting me know the writing isn't reversed, Rachel. Colors on the left. So just some colors that I have out, which are also sliding as we speak. This one might end up down here. Who wants to make a bet? This could be like the little side. Hey, we don't have the Kentucky dirt down, and there's a little bit of some foliage here. We have our skyline, which will be all here. I'm not going to worry about the shapes of the buildings yet because it's silly to at this moment, because I'm just going to cover it with sky. And we have our dried sand line. I'm using a flat angle brush to get the lines in. How do I make it in a buffer? I don't know what to do for you guys. Tell me what to do. All right, now it's working, you said. I don't know, but anyway. Hopefully it won't buffer when I repost it later too. So right now I'm right in this area. I'm going to come in, I'm going to come out, I'm going to come in. Notice when I'm going in and out of these lines, I'm not doing this. That's what not to do. Okay, so don't do that. I'm literally holding my brush horizontally, so the flat part of the angle goes horizontally, and I'm just weaving it in and out. Just here I'm going to call it the edge of the foam. So my technical terminology of ocean. Here we have some end of the foam here. You can draw whatever lines in that you need to get where you need to go. If you need to put in less lines, by all means, put in less lines. If you need to put in more, by all means, that. So I'm just reading, sorry. Okay, I hope it's working okay now. I'm sorry. I'm going to keep saying I'm sorry. So, okay. I think that's all I'm gonna really worry about. Drawing lines, because that's all it is, and it doesn't really matter, so it is what it is. Okay, I'm gonna wash and dry, and I'm gonna start background to foreground. So I'm gonna start off with my sky. Turn this. Oh, I just got like a little thing that says my connection was unstable. So it could be my Wi-Fi too. Sometimes on the side of my house, my Wi-Fi decides to like go in and out. So I apologize. I don't know how to fix that problem other than painting somewhere else in my house, which is totally doable, but not really. I'm gonna do that kind because I feel it's a little softer, a little smoother. I also don't have to help it flow a little bit more, making scratchy sound on your canvas. That's your brush telling you that it's good, okay? So if your brush is paint and lighter, so I'm gonna use a little bit more white. Now, since I'm using oil, I can blend this right up into my wet blue up top. If you're working in acrylic, you can either embrace the brush stroke or kind of quickly plop one, quickly plop the other, and smush them together really fast. So either or. I am allowing myself to have some brush strokes. Number one, it's an alla prima piece. Notice I'm using my whole arm and I'm doing this. So it's not just like my finger and my wrist is going like that. I'm literally, because you can't go to the gym either now. So you might as well get an arm workout in, you know? Okay, so now I have a lot of brush strokes and you can visually see them here. However, if you did want to blend that out, I'm using a very soft brush. Don't ask me brands or sizes because I don't even buy fancy brushes. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to very lightly just barely touch the canvas. Barely touch. And then I'm going to wipe. You just very lightly buff the color into itself. So you can get a little bit more of an even look that way. It just depends on what style you're looking for. Softening brush. However, I don't think there's going to be too much more softening in my piece because I have a lot of, where'd my brush go? I have a lot of texture, a lot of movement going on. So I'm going to take my same brush, and you'll notice I use a lot of the same brush because once I find one brush I love, I just kind of stick with it. And Melissa, someone said that they rewound it and then they watched it from the beginning instead of like full-blown live. So that's another option because it could very much be my Wi-Fi. I really don't know. All right, so now I'm going to take my black, which remember is not really black, and I'm going to start putting in not the city, but this lot of brush. So I have a little blend of my black. I have a little bit of this reddish brown over here, which is just a little slew of burnt sienna. I have a little bit of yellow ochre in it. This is just a little bit of a taupe that I'm adding to it. So when I say taupe, that's really just a grayed yellow ochre. So you can mix up your black and add that to any color to gray it down. It does get a little bit, my darks get a little bit lost. So I want to be scared of the dark. You always want to put them back in, especially, and that's it. And that's in the background. Like I don't even want to be too focused on that because but I do want to start getting a little bit more of my skyline in. So I don't really know what any of these buildings are. That one looks like the Freedom Tower. Isn't that embarrassing? Now, what's a fun fact is just looking for one brush. I actually, if you ever go to Sandy Hook, there's this one area where there's like a bathroom and there's like the deck thing, and then there's these lookout binoculars, and you look out and you see everything. There's actually a whole big illustration, all done in pen and ink and colored on the computer because I did that. It was really fun. So I did that years ago. I did that for the National Park Service. So if you're ever there, check it out. All right, so I have a slew is the word of the day, apparently. Purples and blues going on. And I'm using a very mini angled brush right now. Put it against the dark so you can see it. A mini angle brush. And I am just going to put in some of these shapes that I see. Now, it's far in the distance, which is why it's blue. That is called atmospheric perspective. So you don't necessarily need to have everything perfect. You just want to have a suggestion of maybe some lights and darks, some individual buildings. If you know the city more than me, great. You could be more specific with your layouts. I try to copy exactly kind of what I see, but I don't like to use that word copy, but you know what I mean. It is our world. We are not Xerox machines. We can do whatever we want. Down here, it starts to get a little bit less. I'm going to put in some of my main buildings that I see, just so that way I can say, all right, where am I? Over here, there's a dark building. I'm right around here. Here's one. Here's a taller one. That one looks like it could be more of the Empire State Building. There's a taller one. It's going to be wet still. So all of my colors that go on top are going to instantly lighten. So if there is a color that so if today's demo goes well, by the way, I do want to be able to do more because I want to keep teaching and I know you guys want to keep learning. I'm down to do whatever. So if there's something specific, that I can do whatever. I am at your disposal. You just tell me what you want. So some of these areas I have space that I feel personally that maybe the sky should come down. That is what is going to make your buildings look like they're going off into the distance. So if this sky was like sunset, those buildings would not be blue. They would be like purpley, gray, drab orange kind of color palette. So you guys are figuring out the buffering. Just like keep telling people that sign on and say that. Someone be my designated teller to remind person. The reminder to rewinder. Oh, school teachers, because wow, I'm telling you, at least with my 3 and 5-year-old, it is. Whew, I'm just going to end there. Okay, so I'm going to let that be for the moment. The little things that honestly kind of bother me, but it's in the distance and it's something that I can always go back to. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start laying in my ocean that's way far back. Prussian, because Prussian obviously wanted to make an appearance today. So my angle brush, and I am just gliding it along. I'm using the canvas to hold my hand because I do have a steady hand. I can't do that. Well, you can do this. I don't have a steady hand. I can do it, sort of. The tricky part is getting it to actually be horizontal. So, I mean, you can use a piece of tape, you can use a ruler, you do whatever you need to do. I know some teachers are like, you can't use a ruler. Like, you do you. If it means that you're having a fun time painting, that's all that matters, right? So, horizontal, a thin edge like that across, like so. And there's a lot of white foam splash stuff. So I'm going to try and preserve areas back there for that. And I know I'm working on really start to come together a little bit stronger. So let's get some white. I am using pure white at the moment, simply because once I put that white on there, it's not white anymore. It's going to completely change because white is a very weak color. It needs help. You got to give it a head start. So I'm just going to say, all right, white, I'm going to put you where I see you. Don't worry, making sure that I have a little bit on there. I'm not scooping up the paint. I'm just kind of like flat loading it, which really just means I'm just applying it on either side, making sure it's in my brush hairs. And I could always go back in and add more white to my white. So it's not like it needs to be that white right off the bat. Sometimes the paint just needs to tack up a little bit. Before I go in between here, I'm just going to start to lay in this color. This is my sand color. So what I did was I took white and yellow ochre, and then I added a little bit of my sky color to it. And you'd probably think like, whoa, blue and yellow, wouldn't that make green? Well, if you're just very mindful about how much you mix and where you're putting it and things like that. Remember, we want to get that atmospheric perspective. So if I make this like a yellow and white sand, it's not going to feel like it should belong. Like we want this to feel like it belongs in this day, in this moment. Piece. I'm going to add that into my color. And even if you don't see it in the color, just add it anyway, because why not, right? It's our world. So now the value of this is very similar to my toned base. So if you notice, I didn't work on a white canvas to start with. I started with a very grayed surface. I just took a little bit of gray or thinned down black, and I just went over my canvas with a paper towel. And I did that in acrylic so it's dry. And the reason I did that is because number one, if bits of it come through, I'm okay with that. Number two, my lights look light against a toned background and my darks look dark. So it's instantly already helping me get my values correct. You don't have to do gray. You don't have to tone it if you don't want to. But it does make it a little easier to kind of pull off things without having to fully cover your whole canvas. So, yeah. I've done purple backgrounds. I used to do yellow ochre a lot. I used to do brown. I've done a lot of colors. I'm just going to put in Lydian and alizarin crimson. So that is the minty green and the more pinkier dark red. That surprisingly makes a very neutralized purple. And the reason that is because they are both very blue heavy. It's one of my favorite go-to colors. I use it a lot. I use it a lot for when I'm painting like a black animal. I use that for some of my darks and for a base for my lights. All right, I'm gonna wash and dry, and I'm gonna finish the sandy part here. Now, ideally, I could leave just the canvas color, but OCD part of Andrea just can't do that. So I need to fill it in. So I'm just going to take literally all the colors that I just grabbed, and I'm just kind of blending them together. I have a little bit of my, actually some of my purpley blues back here. I mix that with my brown to create some sort of like transitionary color that will go from wet sand to dry sand. Because really it's not even, I mean, it looks brown, but it's really not even brown. It's, if anything, it's more gray than brown. So you could add a little bit more blues to your mixture, and that's going to make your brown more gray. Let's grab some of this, put that up there. Here I'm going to let there be more texture because it's sand and there's just texture on sand. Here we can be a little bit smoother. I'm going to take it and just go a little more horizontal. Okay, wash and dry. Most importantly, you really want to make sure you're washing your brush. Now I'm taking this and really cleaning it in my terp container and making sure it gets off all the paint and all the gunk settles down below. All right, now what we're going to do is we're going to go in with our purpley blue, what do we call this? This part, so, but it's far away. The area of the beach that is wet, but doesn't have water anymore. Does that make sense? I hope so. The once was foamy spot. The part where like the sand crabs go in. Does anyone know what that part is called? I sound like an idiot. Okay, so once again, I'm still maintaining that horizontal flow, because if I start with my horizontal, I'm getting that vibe of this is a flat surface. This is an area that one could walk on. And that's why I tend to gravitate towards using a lot of my strokes to be horizontal when I'm painting something like water or a flat surface of any kind. Okay, there's a little bit of light here. There's a little light back here. I'm going to take some of this blue that is really just my sky color and work that in some of the white that I have here, because white, even a wave is going to have shadow. It's going to have lights and darks. Everything has lights and darks. Some spots, like when I bring this white foam up to where this wet sand is, or later in my world, I'm okay with that because this is just a suggestion. These waves are always moving. You know, it's not like we have to make it look exactly like that. We have to make it look believable, but it doesn't have to be that moment. Maybe mine's like 5 seconds prior or 5 seconds later. Okay, now that I have like minimal paint on my brush, I'm just at this point reverting back to this next section, which is I'm just kind of almost drawing with my light. We're giving our white a head start. I'm looking at these little strong things right here. And to get squirted out, and they're very thick. They're almost like an ointment. Think like Neosporin or Desitin. Durable when I get my darks in. Because you can't have light without dark. A lot of the times people would be scared of this blue. This is pretty blue. And you guys aren't getting like the intensity because I'm looking at it on the screen as mine is, but it's pretty in what they really are. And we want to try to not do that because you could always dull something down. If you want to calm it down, add brown or something like that, you know, or add its complement. But it's harder to add life into a painting when it's already so neutralized, when it's oil at least. Paintings to sing. You don't want me to sing, but paintings can sing. Okay, here we have some darks happening. There's a little purple. This is an awkward angle. I'm like literally like, I don't know. It's okay. See what I do for you? Just shows how much I care. My viridian and purple mixture. I see little bits of it. Maybe I can kind of work in some of that in here. Very light touch, barely, barely, barely pressing. I don't even want it to be that color. I just want to have it mix slightly. Now I could always mix it on my palette, but if I know the two colors are already here and on my brush, why not just kind of ease up on my pressure? A lot of the times people will not realize pressure can serve a major help. It's a major tool in itself, your pressure when you're painting. So if you want something to make more of a statement, you want to be a little bit more strong with your touch. If you want things to just soften, like how I did the sky, or if you want things just to be, depends on if it's wet or dry, but you can still vary your touch in all medium. I do the same thing with my pastels too. Clean paints and colors. Because a clean palette and a clean brush and clean colors make a happy painting. This is sand again. Some edges are sharp and some edges are a little bit more soft. So when I see things, like up here, there's a little bit more of a distinct line, whereas down here, these two areas start to blend a little bit more. It's still distinct, but it's a softer transition. So okay, let's do all the rest of that ocean now. So, and then there's all these little, I don't know what they are, that word. So we can do that in a few different ways, which I'll do later. So I don't want to get caught up with that right now. All right, all of this is very purple. You probably would never think that I'm using, I mean, if you take classes from me, you know, but if you don't in real life, you don't know how much purple I really use. And I use a lot of it because it's everywhere. It really is. And I'm just literally I'm blending this all with my sky colors. When I say cool, that doesn't mean awesome. It means temperature-wise. Some spots are a little stronger with the white. Wash your brushes while singing happy birthday. We could do that, Lynn Susan. I don't know if brushes will get corona, but you never know. They could hold them for like how many? Like an hour or two? What is it? I don't know. Oh boy. Good old world pandemics. Anyway, so I'm going to go back in with my dark, and this is probably the trickiest area because there's a lot of lights and a lot of darks. Now, since I'm working in oil, the darks can easily take over the lights, and the darks will also lighten up because since they're mixing with the whites, they're taking over, but they're blending a little bit with it. So I have to be mindful enough to say, all right, I have to either wash my brush because it got contaminated, okay? Or just reload my color of choice. So right now I'm kind of dibble dabble, technical term, just tapping it where I see little dark spots. And then I'm going to do the same process with my white in between. Of course, it won't always stay that white, but I will try my best to get it white. You know, give your white the head start, but I just had dark on my brush, so. Let's get a little bit more blue in here, a little more phthalo-iness. There's a little hint of like a green hue happening back there. So I'm going to be using the phthalo a little bit more back here, and kind of plopping that here and there elsewhere, because you don't want to ever have a color that's just in one spot. You want to have it here and there, not everywhere. You want to let your eye travel around with it. You know, we don't want it too crazy green blue because it isn't, you know, sometimes when I grab, like over here, I did not wash my brush. I'm grabbing my light color because I know, like when I said before, I'm mixing a new color and I'm aware of what's on my brush though. So if you tend to not be aware of what's on your brush, you shouldn't do that because then that wouldn't be good. Wilma, purple, I know, it's the purple. I needed you guys to get another demo from me, so you just remember to always use purple. So feel free to always, I am going to be doing some that are for like a minimal fee type thing, because I gotta feed a family and that's just what it comes down to. So, you know what's kind of cool though, if we have to think about something positive out of this whole thing, is this was the first year I made a vision board. And on my vision board, one of the things was online classes, because I always wanted to be able to reach people that weren't just local to me. So because of Corona, it's forcing me to be able to figure this out. It took me a few days and some, I don't want to call it procrastination, but with some, we'll just call it procrastination for lack of a better positive word. But cleaned up my studio, figured out the YouTube thing, and hopefully it works. So I would like to be able to do more of these because I enjoy them and I like to be able to reach a nice broad audience. So, all right, dibble dabbling with some white. There's a little bit of white back here. We're just gonna kind of fling. Now, if you like a fancy word for thick paint on canvas, you can do that. You can do this with a palette knife. Robin, if you're watching, palette knife. You can do this with just a more of a bristlier brush with more substance to your paint. You can kind of scoop up paint a little bit easier with a bristlier brush, I find at least. So this part's really white. Let's get that in there. You know what? I'm going to use, this used to be my favorite brush. Now it's like my third favorite. This is a synthetic bristle. So it's not as bristly as like a typical bristle. This one's just a softer bristle, but still has the power of a stiffer hair behind it. But it's nice to, look, you could hear it. That's making a statement. Okay. How is it looking so far, guys? No one's saying anything. Kristen, don't worry. It's going to be posted afterwards. So you could go back and pause it and do some again and pause it, go to the bathroom, come back. Since this is closer, there's a little bit more splash and stuff happening. It's more visible, still with our horizontal vibe. When I'm squinting my eyes, it's still pretty dark in some spots. Wash and dry. We're on 45 minutes. That's not too bad. I would love your feedback on everything. Granted, I know the buffering is a tricky thing, but I would like to know your feedback on anything and all. Constructive criticism is always open, so don't feel like you're gonna hurt my feelings. I mean, don't say like, that was the worst thing ever. I wasted 45 minutes of my time. That would just be mean, but let me know. If anyone wants to purchase this, it's available. So let me know. And let's see. So now that everything's plopped, I can kind of like reassess what is happening. So ideally, I would get up and look at it from a distance, but I'm not going to do that because if you guys saw how I'm sitting right now, I'm kind of stuck. I'm literally just like table, easel, other easel, little table over here, and my little rolly chair. So I can't even get my juice. Anyway, so at this point, what I'm going to do is I can take a brush, and remember those little things we talked about? I can take a little brush and just kind of like let my brush dance. When I say that, it's actually a technique that I guess I'm calling it dance, but I'm taking my brush and I'm like literally like kind of going like this with it on the surface. So sometimes the tip of the brush hits and sometimes the other side hits, and it's literally like it's dancing. So Kristen, try rewinding and then you'll be able to see it less buffery-ish. Lindsay, then you have to try oil. You really do. It's good stuff. Don't ask Jackie about oil though. She didn't like oil. So we're gonna dance, dance, dance. Now, if you're not a good dancer, you can always do the splatter. That's not a dance. Ideally, it will tap in a few more strokes of purple. And then what I'll do is I will hold this up closer to you so you guys could actually see it a little bit more. And I'll also share a picture of it on my Facebook as well so you guys can see it a little bit more clearly. Whoops, I don't like the little thing. This is a little something. This looks important. I'm just going to literally just putting in, but soft edges, they don't have to be concrete. I'm not using a ruler, but here's my trick. I use a flat or an angled brush, and then it's just literally boop, and that's it. There's a building right there. So, yes, Kristen, I plan on doing these. This one was just, and they'll, so that way you don't always have to be live with it. So those are my, I hate to have to like, as much as I love doing demos, you know, since I am out of work, you know, yada, yada, yada. Gotta feed boys, blah, blah, blah. So a couple little tidbits here. So thank you for joining me as a nice little break. Down here, we could use a few more darks, and pretty much, I think I'm just about there. So let me just put a few more strokes in. Like I said, I could sit here all day long. New wave of the Corona craze, right? Sometimes see my iPad, it died. It didn't die, it's being. Sometimes that's a good thing because we don't need necessarily to see everything. I want this to stand on its own. So this is something is I used my iPad because sometimes it's nice to be able to, I'll show you, like zoom in. Maybe you want to know what's going on. And it's particularly helpful like animals and such, but it is pretty helpful color-wise, detail-wise. Also, I've noticed that since I started using the iPad as my reference photo, essentially, I have been battling trying to compensate for a backlit reference photo. And most people would think like, oh, well, that's, you know, that's horrible. Like we shouldn't like be competing with that. But it's a good thing because it forces me to get a little louder with my colors, to get a little bit more vibrant with my values and things like that. So I think it's a good thing. So anyway, all right, now I'm going to do is I'm going to sign over here. I'm going to use a color that I see here. So, what color should I use? If you said purple, I know you said it out loud too, probably. You know me. So I'm going to use purple. I'm going to use a little bit of terp. I'm using a small round brush, and I'm just going to make a mark from me. Does it have to be legible? No. Preferably, you know, maybe some sort of suggestion of legibility, but I normally just do a squiggly A and then some stuff, and then a squiggly G with some ups and downs, and that's it. So that's just about it. You can kind of see a little closer. So you see all those little variations of stroke. Little dancing speckliness. Okay. But I'm new to YouTube fairly. Stay safe, stay healthy, wash your hands for 20 seconds more, and stay tuned for more things. I think that's about everything. Yes. Okay. I'm going to hit end stream, and I'm going to try and make it so it goes onto the channel. So hopefully it works. Okay. Bye, everyone. Thanks for coming, by the way. This really means a lot.